Chapter 15. Angie scanned the red-on-black graphic stretched across her computer screen. "Is this it?" "Huh, it is," said her father with a note of triumph in his voice. They had spent the last 20 minutes poring through the dozens of programs they had discarded over the years. Some were earlier incarnations of software they still employed. Some had outlived their usefulness, and some had never been useful. This particular system hadn't been used for 20 years, but with luck, Angie would resurrect it. "You've got it?" asked Saigo. Angie looked back over her shoulder at him, enduring the sour milk smell of his breath. "Looks like it." "That's good," said Cody. "Now we need to see if we can establish contact with the remote sensors." That was the trick, all right, and they hadn't been maintained in a couple of decades. For all Angie knew, not a single one of them would respond. Her dad had set up the heat-sensing system before she was old enough to know what it was. In those days, he was inordinately concerned with fires, since her mother had died in one, albeit in a mining colony a star system away. Then, experience showing him how unlikely it was that a fire would start in the domes, Philippakos' concern waned, and the system fell into disuse. Until now. Because it was sensitive enough to detect more than combustion. It could track the heat given off by a living creature, in this case, the one that had gestated inside Pandor. Somewhere, it was lying in wait for them. Knowing where would do a lot to maximize their chances of survival. "Come on," Angie thought, asking the remote sensors to let her know they were still operative. Suddenly, red dots began to pop up on her screen, and they kept popping up, each one representing a different sensor in a different dome. She smiled to herself. "I can't believe it," said her father. Neither could Angie. But the screen doesn't lie. Every last sensor was reporting in, demonstrating its functionality. "Now let's see where the damned thing is," said her father, referring to the alien. Angie polled the system's readings from one end of the domes to the other, looking for the blue flame-shaped icon that would indicate a telltale concentration of thermal energy. But as the data came in, she didn't see what she thought she would see. Philippakos swore under his breath. "What is it?" Gogolak asked. "It can't be right," Angie insisted, her stomach tightening into a hard, painful knot. And yet, the system seemed to be functioning perfectly. "Well?" Saigo prompted. It was Angie who answered him. "Ripley said we had to worry about an alien. One. But according to this system, it's not one. There's a whole pack of them." Saigo pushed past her and looked at the monitor screen, where there were so many blue flames in evidence that they were crowding each other. And only 4 of them could be chalked up to Shepard, Call, Ripley, and Jonah. "For Christ's sakes!" Saigo said, looking back over his shoulder at his colleagues. "The bastards are everywhere!" "In fact," said Angie, "there's an even dozen of them, scattered pretty much throughout the domes." So no matter where the colonists went, they were likely to encounter one of them. "Wait a minute," said Gogolak. She turned to Cody, then Hendricks. "You were there when Pandor died. Why didn't you tell us there were so many of them?" Cody frowned. "Hendricks was sick in the bushes. I went to make sure she was all right." He shrugged. There could have been more, I guess. I just didn't see them. Ripley told us she knew them, said Hendricks, her voice small and threaded with pain. She said she'd run into them before. Why didn't she tell us there'd be more than one? Angie shook her head, at a loss for an explanation. I don't know. Maybe Ripley doesn't know them as well as she thinks she does. As Ripley entered the control center with Jonah in tow, she saw a heightened fear in the faces of the colonists. But then she had thrown them a curve, telling them there was only one alien to worry about. And as it turned out, there was a second one. Call turned to Ripley, frustration in her synthetic eyes. No doubt she had been doing her best to calm the rising tide of panic. Then Ripley saw it wasn't just frustration in Call, it was something else as well. Something happened while I was gone. We've got a bigger problem than we thought, Call told her. Damned right we have, snapped the man with the sharp features. He pointed at Ripley. You people really haven't been of much help. They don't have to help at all, Philippakos said, before Ripley or any of her people could say it. So let's stay calm and figure this out. Figure what out? Ripley asked. The woman who looked like a little girl came forward. For the first time, Ripley saw the resemblance between Philippakos and what must have been his daughter. Pandor didn't give birth to one alien, or even two, the woman said in her childlike voice. He gave birth to a whole litter. She jerked a thumb over her shoulder. I've located them with the help of a heat-sensing system. All 12 of them. Call nodded. I checked out the reading. It's accurate. Ripley shook her head, reflexively rejecting the notion. It doesn't work that way. Then where, she asked herself, did the second one come from? She had been plaguing herself with that question since Call alerted her to the thing's existence. The obvious answer was that there had been a second egg and a second host. But there were only a handful of people living in the domes. It seemed unlikely that someone else could have given birth without the others knowing about it. Give me a better explanation, said Philippakos' daughter. Multiple births. It was outside Ripley's realm of experience. Kane had given life to a single alien. So had Purvis, the nickel miner on the Auriga. So had Ripley herself. It had never occurred to her that multiple births were possible. But with the help of Wren and the Auriga's other scientists, Ripley's daughter had delivered a live hybrid, bypassing the need for an egg and the facehugger that came with it. So who am I to say what's possible and what's not? What's more, it fit with the anatomy of the alien she had encountered. A different kind of gestation, a different kind of delivery, a different kind of alien. It's another breed. Ripley responded, a little lamely, she thought. But where had it come from, and why hadn't she ever been made aware of it in all her dealings with Weyland-Yutani, the military, and the aliens themselves? Ripley burned to find out, but for now she had to focus on getting them out of there. I won't lie to you, she told the colonists. The number of aliens out there is going to have an impact on our chances of survival. But we've established that the backup bay is functioning. If we can get to it, my people will get us out of here." "What are you suggesting?" asked the sandy-haired woman. "That we try to make it across the colony with all those monsters out there?" "Have we got a choice?" asked Shepard. "Not as far as I can tell," said Philippakos. Ripley nodded. "Let's go then." "Now?" asked the man with the sharp features. "Now," Ripley told him. She glanced at an observation port which showed her the diminishing sunlight in one of the domes. "Before it gets any darker." "This can't be happening," Simone thought, his breath coming in weary, ragged gasps. "It can't." Had he known the developing alien wandering the domes had advanced enough to attack Rama that way, he would never have followed Ripley down in the first place. He would have stayed where he was like a good boy and waited till she came back. But even after Simone saw what had happened to Rama, he still had believed he would survive. All he had to do was beat the alien to the control center, and it wouldn't even start to come after him until it was done picking Rama apart. For the upteenth time, the reporter found himself picturing Rama's death. There was lots of blood, no doubt, and screams dulled by the surrounding foliage, and the soft, sucking sound of Rama's insides being dragged out of him. "No," Simone thought, forcing the image away again. "I can't think about that." After all, the situation had changed. It was no longer just a matter of reaching the control center ahead of the alien, because a little while earlier, as Simone approached the place, he saw another alien up ahead of him. It was dark and slick-looking, just like the one who had sunk its teeth into Rama, and it was as big as the full-grown alien in Morse's forbidden book. As Simone doubled back to avoid it, his heart pounding so hard he could barely breathe, he found himself thinking it wasn't fair. He wasn't supposed to be in any danger. There was only supposed to have been one alien. One, goddammit! And it wasn't supposed to have been mature enough to pose a threat. Now, having had some time to absorb the reality of his plight, he found he could deal with it a little better. His heart was still beating too hard, and his clothes were rank with sweat, but he had put some distance between himself and the second alien. For the moment, at least, he was all right. He was alive and, as far as he could tell, alone. At the moment, Simone's biggest problem was that he didn't know where he was going. In his panic, he had gotten turned around and lost sight of the Betty, and now he didn't know how to find the dome she was hovering over. He didn't know how to get to the control center either, even if there hadn't been an alien standing in its way. Shit, he thought, suppressing a surge of panic. I don't know anything. All he could do was to keep moving and hope he came in sight of the cargo vessel before the aliens came in sight of him. It was his only chance to keep on living. And it wasn't a bad chance, Simone kept telling himself. The domes were only so big, and there were only so many of them. Eventually the Betty had to show herself, and when she did, he would be in good shape again. Unfortunately, he wasn't likely to get a very good reception on his return to the ship. Vriess and Bolero had been fond of Rama. They wouldn't be happy to learn he had perished because he'd had to follow the reporter down. Then they don't have to know, he thought. It was the obvious answer, and Simone had gotten good at lying. honing the skill in his pursuit of Ripley from border station to border station, good enough to talk his way out of anything, even in the crudest company. He would handle Vriess and Bolero just fine, and when Ripley and the others came back, he would handle them too. Simone was still thinking about it when he heard something crack in the jungle behind him. A twig? He wondered, feeling something cold trickle down his spine. What would make a twig snap in a place like this? Oh my God, he thought, and started pelting through the jungle in the opposite direction. But he could hear something hastening after him, making a hissing sound as it brushed against the leaves, gaining on him with every thunderous beat of his heart. Suddenly, lying to Vriess was the least of Simone's worries. Philippakos felt a pang as Shepard guided their flivver through the dense foliage of the African rainforest, leaving the security of the control center behind. Glancing back over his shoulder, he saw Cody at the wheel of the other flivver. Cody wasn't the driver Shepard was, but he was doing an admirable job of keeping up. And Ripley? She was ensconced in the seat beside Cody, her hair blowing back, her shock rifle cradled in her arms. It made Philippakos feel good knowing she was there. Funny, isn't it? Not so long ago, he had suspected the woman's motives, refused to open his station to her. Now he was willing to place his life in her hands. He corrected himself. Not just willing, eager. Her crew seemed to feel the same way. It was as if she were more than human to them, more than flesh and blood. But that was the persona some people projected. They took on burdens others wouldn't, faced problems others couldn't, and because of that, they commanded respect. Philippakos wasn't so different from Ripley in that regard. For decades, he had shouldered the responsibility of running the colony, kept his people safe and productive. But truth be told, he hadn't fought alien monsters, nor did he have any desire to do so. That sort of responsibility he was only too happy to leave to Ripley. He just hoped that when it was over, when his people and Ripley's had escaped the colony, there was a way to rid it of the aliens that had infested it. He wasn't sure he could convince EarthGov to spend the requisite funds, but he would give it his best shot. Philippakos had said he wouldn't sacrifice a person for the 100,000 square meters of rare plants encapsulated in the domes, and he had been right to say so. But he still loved the aspens and the palmettos and the cinnamon trees, and he wasn't going to let them go without a fight. First things first, he reflected. They had to reach the backup bay before they could start making plans. Looking up at the curvature of the dome above them, Philippakos estimated they were more than halfway to the hatch, and on the most direct route possible. So far, so good, and they hadn't seen a sign of the aliens. But then, his daughter's thermal scan hadn't shown any of them in this dome or the next one. If the flivvers were going to encounter opposition, it would likely be in Dome 3 or later. Not that the aliens weren't capable of moving around. According to Ripley, they could be like lightning when they wished. As he thought of that, Shepard pulled their flivver hard to the right, whipping his passengers in the opposite direction. Surprised, Philippakos turned to him. "The hatch is up ahead, Shep." "I know," the safety officer told him, "but this way is better." Philippakos was going to object until he saw the way Shepard had taken them gave them more clearance on either side of the vehicle. The dearth of branches whipping at them translated immediately into more speed, which was after all what they needed. "I see what you mean," the administrator said. "I thought you would. Shepard responded without looking at him. Philippakos bit his lip. You are an idiot sometimes, he told himself. Walking the domes was one thing, patrolling them in a flivver day in and day out was quite another. For what seemed like a long time, they slashed through the jungle, passing tamarinds and cola nuts and oil palms in the gently fading sunlight. Finally, through the red-flowered branches of an African tulip tree, Philippakos spied the hatch that led to the next dome. He nodded. Good going, Shep. We're not out of the woods yet, said Shepard. Philippakos was about to contend otherwise when something insanely big and dark lurched across their path. He heard a cry of warning, and Shepard swerved to the right, but it was too late. The flivver hit the thing and ran up its side, dumping its human cargo. Philippakos braced himself for a potentially lethal impact, but it wasn't nearly as bad as he thought. Not much worse, in fact, than falling out of bed. Scrambling to his feet, he tried to get his bearings, but he was jostled by first one colleague and then another as they tried to save themselves, and it stole his sense of direction. The thing that had collided with the flivver was hurt, apparently, but not fatally, because it was in the process of freeing itself from the weight of the vehicle. And as if that wasn't bad enough, Philippakos saw another shadowy giant shambling in their direction along the path behind them. Frantically, he looked for his daughter, but there was no sign of her. Then he realized with a pang of desperation that she was still in the flivver, trying to get out before it turned over and crushed the life out of her. Angie! Philippakos bellowed. Only barely did she manage to leap free of the flivver before it rose to its full height and came crashing down on its back. But by then, she and her father had worse things to worry about. Infinitely worse. Because the creature into which the vehicle had crashed was slowly but surely crawling over it to get at Angie. Philippakos grabbed her by her arm and pulled her away from the thing. But before he could get very far, someone careened into him, knocking him backwards into a tree trunk, where he realized he had lost his grip on his daughter. And as he tried to get her back, the other creature came between them. This one wasn't injured or dazed. It was quick, alert, coiled to strike. And Angie was the fleeing piece of meat that seemed to have caught its attention. No! Philippakos thought, already feeling his world hollowed out by his daughter's loss. But before the thing could reach her, it was skewered on a bolt of seething pale blue energy. Twitching in its grasp, the alien was forced back. The hatch! Roared Ripley, who was responsible for the barrage. She was standing up in the shotgun seat of the second flivver, her face bent over her rifle. Get to the hatch! Philippakos wanted very much to follow her advice. However, his daughter was running in the opposite direction. Angie! He yelled after her, hoping to stop her in her tracks. But she didn't seem to hear him. She kept running, no doubt in the belief that an alien was right behind her. And a moment later, she vanished into the embrace of the forest. Philippakos cursed to himself as he lowered his head and plunged in after her. Ripley's decision was made for her when she saw the colonists scatter into the depths of the jungle. Go! She growled at Cody. Then she leapt from the flivver, rolled, and came up running with her burner in her hands. Call and Jonah would know what she wanted, for them to deposit Cody and Gogolak in the backup bay, if they could. Only then, when those two were safe, would Ripley approve of her comrades coming back. Unfortunately, she wasn't confident there would be anything left for them to find. The aliens had an uncanny instinct for knowing where the meat was, and as soon as they realized how much of it was in that dome, they would converge on the place. In minutes, all 12 of them would be stalking human prey, ravening for human flesh. And as big as they were, for reasons Ripley didn't have time to think about, it would be difficult to deny them what they wanted. Some might say impossible. But Ripley was damned well going to try. "Angie!" Philippakos bellowed, aware that he might be attracting the attention of the aliens. "Angie, stop!" Just then, he caught a glimpse of her. She wasn't that far ahead, but there was a lot of dense, dark jungle between them. "Angie!" He roared, determined that she hear him. And she did. He could see her turn and peer through a thicket of branches at him, wide-eyed with fear. "Angie!" he said, tearing through the intertwining foliage. "It's all right. I'm coming." Then Philippakos was there with her, his arms folded around her, whispering reassurances in which he hadn't the least bit of confidence. He could feel his daughter trembling, her tiny frame feeling smaller than ever before. I thought they were going to get me," she said, a catch in her voice, though it was clear she was trying to regain control of herself. "Ripley was right. They're monsters." "Hush," said Philippakos. "We'll be all right. All we've got to do is find the—" Before he could finish, something emerged from the jungle behind Angie. It was big, black, and vaguely insectoid in its posture. As it moved, it used its claws like forepaws, enabling it to pick its way more efficiently. It had no eyes that Philippakos could see, but it had a maw full of razor-sharp teeth. "Dad?" said Angie, looking into his eyes. Then she whirled and saw the alien. A gasp escaped her, but she didn't run this time. She just stood there, her hand finding its way into her father's. He enclosed it in his own, letting her know he was with her. But really, it was a futile gesture, and he knew it. The alien advanced on them slowly, slaver dripping from its jaws, as if it didn't want to reach them too quickly, as if it wanted to savor its kill to the fullest extent possible. And truthfully, there was no need for it to hurry. It was a killing machine, and it was facing the two most helpless victims it could have found anywhere in the domes. It wasn't that Philippakos minded dying so much. He had lived the life he wanted. He had no complaints to speak of, no regrets. But he couldn't contemplate the idea of the monster taking Angie. She was his little girl, his baby. If she died, it would be as if the universe had shut down. Philippakos had to keep that from happening, no matter what it took. But he didn't know if he had it in him. He was just an old man, and a fat old man at that. And that was what made his heart pound so hard. "Go," he told his daughter. "Dad!" she moaned. "Run!" he bellowed, and Angie ran. Philippakos wished he could be assured of her safety. He could rest easy knowing she had survived, no matter what else happened. But he doubted he would live long enough to find out.